I'll get away. What happened is Ishai left his notes up on the lectern, and so I took it upon myself to say, Joel is awesome, to see if he'd actually say it. So he did. Okay, well, good afternoon once again. Today what I'm going to do is talk to you about what happens after you deliver that incredible elevator pitch that you all developed over time, and you've developed it to an investor. And so the question is, when you're done, you've opened the door to pitch your value of your company as an investment to raise money. And so the question, when that door closes, will you be on the inside? Today, what I plan on doing is showing you how to take that presentation. So for example, you heard 7 excellent presentations in terms of their scripting, their rehearsal, their practice, their delivery. You saw visuals, and I'm going to show you how to break that down into individual pieces. And some of this information you'll find will be not a surprise to you, but how I present it may be a little bit different. Okay, your goal when you pitch the value of your company or present the value of your company is real simple. You are there to sell the value of your company as an investment. Now, what oftentimes happens is that with so much information out there, entrepreneurs continue to get it wrong in spite of all the blogs, the articles, the books written on the subject. And I think there's probably a lot of reasons. And as Ishai said, I have heard hundreds, if not well over 1,000 presentations where entrepreneurs are telling their story. And it's interesting. I think sometimes as an entrepreneur, you're so excited about your company. What oftentimes happens is that you're not paying attention to your investor and what their needs are. It could be the fact is that you are so excited about your opportunities that are available to you in the marketplace, you're blind to some of the pitfalls. I'm sure each and every one of you can come up with your own reasons. But I got to tell you, the thing that seems to come up over and over and over again is the fact that many entrepreneurs think their job is to teach and educate me about their company. It's not your primary goal. Your primary goal is to sell the value of your company as an investment, to raise capital. Now, you may educate and teach along the way, but it's only a tactic. So, as you are done with your presentation, you essentially will be moving your investor one step closer. It's a courting process. You want to move them one step closer to deciding on the bottom line. So what I'm going to do is now take you through the next thing you want to do, which is to build your presentation, and that's to plan your presentation and prepare. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Abraham Lincoln. He's one of our presidents that go back quite some time. And one of the quotes he had, I heard the other day, I thought was perfect. And what he said, if you gave me 6 hours to chop down a tree, they didn't have chainsaws back then. If you gave me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would take 4 hours and use that time to sharpen my axe. Essentially, what he's saying is that you've got to dedicate yourself to the preparation of your presentation. Because if you're pitching in the big leagues, and if you're asking for $1 million or more, that is the big leagues. You've got to prepare. I want to show you what happens when you don't prepare.
Ladies and gentlemen, director and producer Michael Bay.
How is everyone today? My job as a director is I get to dream for a living.
Michael, you know, you're known for such unbelievable action. What inspires you? How do you come up with these unbelievable ideas?
I create visual worlds that are so beyond everyone's normal life experiences. And Hollywood is a place that creates a viewer escape. And what I try to do is, as a director, I try to the type is all off, sorry, but I'll just wing this.
Tell us what you think.
Yeah, we'll wing it right now. I try to take people on an emotional ride, and
the curve? How does it? How do you think it's going to impact how viewers experience your movies?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Michael Bay for joining us. So let's talk a little bit about some other UHD TVs and some other wonderful things we've got going on. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, look, but right there. Michael's got a lot of great things going on. We're going to be very excited to be part of what he's doing and how people are watching TV on a Samsung Curve UHD TV. It truly is going to be more engaging and more stimulating. Thanks again, Michael.
Preparation is key. Now, I don't know about you, but that I find painful. I have seen this now probably 30 times, just from a variety of aspects. My heart goes out to them, and at the same time, we all have our presentations, and we fear of something going wrong, and we have to plan for the alternative. And so what happened there is his teleprompter didn't work, and he didn't have any sense of what his preparation was. Here's a guy who's one of the top directors in the world, and you saw what happened to him. So no one is immune. You've got to prepare. So remember, the better you know your presentation, the better you can stay on point, which is in our case, when we talk about an investor presentation, it's to sell the value of your company as an investment. That's it. So when you pull together your preparation as part of your planning, it's important that you have a context for it. And you should be able to deliver this investor presentation, which is usually your first meeting with your potential investors, whether it's a VC or an angel firm. You're probably going to have about 15 minutes, maybe 20. Now, oftentimes, your investors will give you plenty of time to let you hang yourself. And what I mean by that is they'll let you take as much time as you want until they tell you they're not interested anymore. So, what you want to do is build that presentation with that in mind, and I'm going to talk through the specifics. The other thing is, as you build your presentation, keep in mind that a customer presentation is very different than an investor presentation. You can't just make some slight adjustments and hope that it's going to work. It doesn't work that way. Investors have a very different perspective. Now, some of the tools I'm going to talk about how to build this presentation apply to when you do it to a customer, but again, it's going to be very specific today about the whole investor part of it. Now, the way to stay on time is to think about your good old your friend, the elevator pitch. And for those of you, and I don't think many of you have seen it, but there's TV shows in Canada and in the US, Dragon's Den, and there's a couple other ones, where you have someone come up and present to judges. And they're essentially hitting the main points that I'm going to talk about, which are 10, running out of fingers, 10 major points, and you want to develop an elevator pitch for each one of those, a very hard-hitting and a very precise way of delivering on that. You do that, and you'll make a big impact. Mark Twain said, I'm not sure exactly how this quote goes, but essentially, I wrote a long letter because I didn't have time to write a short one. It is hard work what I'm talking about here. So I say this whole idea about what we're talking is simple, but it's not as simple as it sounds. Trust me on this. Okay, if you were to, that's so funny. I said okay, and it sounded just like that guy that was trying to recover from Michael Bay walking off the stage. You can imagine how that must have felt. Anyway, so as it relates to Googling, I'm sure many of you have Googled investor presentations, and what you're going to quickly find is that there's thousands of pages of topics and articles and, again, blogs and people's opinions. But what you're going to quickly find, there's about 10 topics that keep coming up over and over and over again. And so I'm going to talk about these 10 topics. Now keep in mind, when I talk about these topics, you will not be surprised by any of them. But how you present these topics is what's going to separate you. And we're going to talk about some other techniques that separate you from the crowd as well. But you've got to hit these topics dead on. I liken it to losing weight. How do you lose weight? You run, you exercise, you eat less, right? That's it. That's a $750 billion market to tell you that. It's crazy. This is the same thing here. This kind of stuff is really pretty straightforward. You've got to do the work and deliver on it, and if you do, it works. Okay. I'm going to start with the first topic, and that is the logo. Here what you want to do is, I like starting with the logo, and we're going to talk about changing the order a little bit later, but I like starting with the logo because it's real simple. And because it's simple, the audience quickly returns their audience right back to you, and now you've got an opportunity to do something with that attention. What you want to do is open with a hook. And when I say a hook, I'm talking about something like could be a 15-second or a 30-second type of statement that grabs someone's attention. It's something about your marketplace and give them a little bit of a tease about your solution. We're talking something, again, maybe 30 seconds long. And I'm going to give you an example of one that's even shorter. So when you're done with that hook, essentially that person you will have grabbed their attention, and you'll be able to pull them through the rest of your presentation because it's going to be so hard-hitting, essentially. So check this out for a hook. This is a technology company, and I'm sorry I don't have what they originally said, but it got revised by the investor. But here's what they said. If you suffer a stroke, our product can mean the difference between you going home and living a normal life versus never recognizing your family again. Imagine starting a presentation like that. I don't know about you, but it would totally grab me. So I'm going to say, what's next, type of a thing. So that's an example of a hook. The second thing is you want to talk about the problem in your marketplace. Here what you want to do is make sure your investors are feeling the pain of what's going on. You want to describe the pain, you want to describe the problem, and why it continues to occur, and why no one's addressing the problem, or has successfully addressed the problem to date. I'll give you another example, LinkedIn. And this was early on in LinkedIn's history. This is when they did their Series B financing, and you saw it right in their slide. What they said, there is no trusted and effective way for professionals to find and attract and transact with each other. It's exactly what LinkedIn does. And you think about that, that was one sentence that captured the problem that they've actually resolved. So again, the work is getting it nice and simple. Next thing is the solution. Here what you want to do is talk about the fact is that you've come up with a solution. Real, clear, and straightforward. You want to show that you have a viable product and you have the ability to implement on the execution of it. It's real simple. Now, there's a couple ways you can do that. In terms of the case studies, I'm not sure how many of you use case studies in your presentations, but what you do here is essentially talk about a customer problem, how your customer found you, or you found them, how your product or service was applied to that situation, and then the key metrics or the results of that meeting and of your product being applied. So you can do that all in, again, less than a minute. The other thing you can do is you can feature your product. We saw one of the presenters bring the product up there. You want to demonstrate your product in a very short, concise way. Now, keep in mind when you do this, that's a tricky thing to be doing because oftentimes it will start eating up a bunch of time. And if you do this right, you got to do it in 15 minutes, maybe a few minutes more. But when you do it that way, you're going to leave them wanting more as opposed to being exhausted. So when you do this product demonstration, if that's what you end up doing, basically know that you're just going to tell them a little bit more than a sentence. You're going to give them a tease. You're going to show them what your product does, but you are not, this is not a sales presentation, and you're not going to go into all that detail about how wonderful your product is. Trust me, and I think probably some of you have been through this, if you have an investor interested in your product or service, what ends up happening after this particular meeting, that follows the elevator pitch, is that you're going to have dedicated meetings to talk about different aspects of your business, such as your IP, your management team, and things like that. You will have plenty of time to dig in deep on this topic. That's not what the purpose here is. You're there to get their interest. Okay, the next area is secret sauce. Here what you want to show is that you have something in your business that is unique. Someone else can't easily replicate it or surpass your solution. You want to show how you can leverage and scale your business in such a way that it allows you to basically drive more profitability. Now here what you probably could do is probably talk about some combination of your proprietary technology, unique team domain expertise, the talent in your company, or maybe strategic partnerships. Only you know what it is that your secret sauce is. But again, that secret sauce is the stuff that makes you extremely unique and stand out from the crowd, and people cannot easily replicate you. Again, you could do this in 1 or 2 or 3 sentences. Next is your business model. Here what you want to do, this is I think roughly the 5th topic of the 10. Here what you want to do is show how your product or service translates into a viable company. In other words, you've got to basically show how that drives profitability, value in your company, whatever it is. And you want to show that you have a solid understanding of the economics of your company. How many of you have seen the movie Jerry Maguire? Okay, it looks like about half of you. Jerry Maguire's that scene in the movie where that famous dude's talking to this other famous guy, and they're saying, you know, they're trying to negotiate a sports contract, and Tom Cruise. So Tom Cruise talked to the athlete, and he's basically saying, you know, I've got this contract, yada, yada, yada. And he goes, show me the money, show me the money. The point is that, you know, they was basically saying, I don't care about all the talk. You show me the money, then we have something to talk about. What you want to do is basically show the money to your investor in terms of how it is that you make money and how it works. Be specific in talking about your strategy, products, and your organization, and whatever else is very relevant to that conversation. Now, what's interesting about this, as an investor, one of the things I love to do, and a lot of investors will do the same thing, is they're going to test your understanding of your business. They're going to test your understanding of all the moving pieces. They're going to challenge you on your assumptions. And we're going to talk about why they're going to be especially careful to challenge you, because there's a mindset that they know about you. And we'll get into that later. But be prepared to defend whatever it is that you say and do it in a nice, rational way. Next up is sales and marketing. Obviously, sales and marketing needs to work together. Now, here you want to talk about your target market. Now, many of you probably have products and services that cover a wide range of customers. What you don't want to do is basically represent yourself as talking about, I cover all types of markets. What you want to do is have a segmented strategy. And that is a very famous quote by this big marketer. Essentially, he's saying that more money has been wasted on targeting and spending money on customers that are really not part of their target market. Any entrepreneur knows this, and I've been a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization with thousands of people, and I got to tell you, I was constantly battling limited resources, constantly. Whether it's sales or marketing, whether it's expending capital resources, whatever it might be. So if you can deliver the message that you understand how to segment your market to an investor, they're going to be pretty astute, and they're going to hear that, and essentially what they're going to say is that this guy or gal or this team understands what it takes to focus, because focus is critical when you have limited resources. So talk about how you're going to acquire your customers. You know, how are you going to go to market for that particular segment? What does it cost to acquire a customer? How about customer retention rates? Any of those kinds of things are going to be important topics, and the kinds of assumptions you want to build into your financial modeling as well. So it all needs to tie together nicely. And the last thing you want to do here is really emphasize how the market is waiting for you. So think about each of your companies. Do you have a market that is embracing your product to date? Figure out where that is, and that's the kind of stuff you want to talk about. That's where you kind of get that feeling of like, this is my market I need to deliver on. If you don't have a product that's out yet, you probably have some kind of, not necessarily market research, but you probably have a good sense that the market is eagerly awaiting for you to hit the market. And those are the kinds of things you can talk about in your presentation as well. And again, you're not going to go on and on and on about it. We're talking maybe 1 or 2 sentences that makes that point. You know, I had so much fun doing these slides, I got to tell you. These are nice and simple. We're going to talk about how to develop slides in a little bit. But here you want to talk about your competition. Look at that, knocked out. So you want to talk about your competition, and here you don't want to say you don't have any, because your competition, at the very, very least, is the old way of doing things. But the reality is you probably do have competition. And you need to convince your investor that you have a handle on it, and they will select you as an alternative. Now, another aspect of this is this whole idea of listing out all your competitors. and then all the deficiencies of them. We've seen that in presentations a lot. I don't think you need to go into that kind of detail in that first presentation, that first meeting. But again, what you want to do is demonstrate to your investor that people will select your product or service in spite of the alternatives. Management team. There's probably not a person in Silicon Valley that wouldn't tell you that you need a top flight management team if you're going to build a great company. There's always going to be a few people out there who will say that I don't care about your management team. If you've got a great IP, we'll get the management team in there. But as a rule, people are looking to you as the team. So keep that in mind. How you represent and how you talk about your team is critical in terms of convincing your investors you have got the right team in place. First of all, you want to make sure you're showing that your team is dedicated to your company and they have the ability to implement. So how do you do it? I would suggest, I'm not sure if there's any sports fans in here. I'm personally not one, but I've heard that they talk about sports people and they take the field. You know, they have this kind of accomplishment, that kind of accomplishment. That's what you want to do. You want 10 to 15 second sound bites on each of your key players that you're going to talk about and basically say, here is their strengths, here's what they've accomplished, and move on quickly. Don't spend a lot of time on it. 10 to 15 seconds. Boom, 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 and then you move on. Now, if you're missing relevant talent in your team, or perhaps that you might be viewed as having a young team that doesn't have all the experience needed to take this to where it's eventually going to go, talk about it. If you have a situation where you need to hire some people, let them know that the use of proceeds will be to hire, attract, and retain somebody to be on your team. Just get that out all in the open. And also keep in mind that many investors, and I think most investors, will want to see that management team highlighted as much as your business idea. That's how important that is. They're going to be looking closely at that. And I'll cite an example in a little bit. Next up is your financial projections. Here, what you want to do is show that your numbers are grounded in reality. So when you do this, often, I think pretty much we're all sophisticated enough not to do the old hockey stick type of a thing. But what you do want to do is make sure that your assumptions and the numbers that you project are definitely grounded in reality. And you have the ability to defend the numbers you're showing and the assumptions that are behind it. Show key metrics, whatever drives value in your company. For example, if eyeballs drive value, show that. If you have a situation where revenues are key, show it. And show 3 years out. I don't think there's any reason to go past 3 years unless the investors are asking that. But I think most of us would know if you've run a small company or a large company, the ability to forecast past 2 years is pretty tough. I remember going through this whole reforecasting effort I think it was every 3 months. We'd have to kind of go through this discipline and it was a public company, going through those kind of revisions. So I would say to you that I think we can all agree going past 3 years is pretty difficult. The other thing here is show your history. I have seen so many presentations where the company's been in effect in business for a year or 6 months or maybe a year and a half, and they're not showing the history. Be proud of what you've done. I don't care if you have no revenues. You are laying the groundwork for your company to be able to grow revenues. And so own it. You know, the fact is, you bet we haven't generated revenues. We have been focusing on this, and when we're done with this, we're going to do that. And that, by the way, is driving revenues. If you deliver on that kind of way, investors will love you for it. And then finally is the ask. Here what you want to do is talk about how people have invested in your company, how much they put in, what percentages they have, are they strategic, or are they financial type of investors, and then of course, what you're asking for, how much money you want and what you're going to use the money for. Just, own it, take it and say it. And then you want to ask them if there's any questions or what the next steps are. It's real simple. Something to keep in mind about this, I remember, I think it was in our last Merage class back in Orange County. It might have been the one before. But one of the questions is the whole idea around, do I ask for more money than I need because we're always underestimating it, or do I ask for less money, or do I ask what I really need? What you want to do is think through what you need. and run it by people, run it by your mentors, run it by outside influences, and check out your thinking to see that you're asking for the right amount of money, and ask for that. Now, you want to have an open enough dialogue with your investors so that you can say, look, here's how I see it laid out. You are not perfect. None of us are, trust me. So they're not going to be looking at very specific numbers and say, I'm going to hold you to that. But they're going to look at the integrity of the direction of what you're saying. And so that's an open discussion that you can have with your investors. At the same time, make sure that you have a very educated approach on how you got to those numbers. Okay, so no surprise, right? These 10 topics, you've known them, you've heard about them. But again, the way you separate yourself on these 10 topics, the first way is that you come up with a very short, hard-hitting way of dealing with them and make sure you're hitting the relevant points. So now that you do that, now you get to tell a story. And I think a lot of people are always trying to figure out ways to tell stories. And what I like to do is I have a technique which is called what do I call this thing? I know, I need a story to come up with what I call it. It's, let's call it my story development tool. This is not something I read about in a book. I made it up for this presentation. But it works, and it works great. So here's how it works. I take the 10 topics. Now, in this case, it's the logo, problem, solution, secret sauce, yada, 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 ending with the ask. Now, that's all a very logical order. Now, what I'm going to show you is a tool. And trust me, it's real simple, but it works great. It's very similar to storyboarding that is used in the movie industry. So this can work for your customer presentations. This can work for any presentation where you have a set of topics and you want to come up with something creative. It's a mind hack. So what you do is you come up with all those cards individually like I have here, and I have my little notes here about what I want to say if I need to reference them. And then I practice my presentation. So this is a good way to get well practice. As you saw with our 7 presenters that were up earlier and the 2 Merage Fellows, they're very well practiced. They rehearsed. It's great to rehearse a topic at a time. And then you put it all together. And then what you do is you take all these cards and you mix them up. And then you start grabbing cards randomly. And then you start practicing the cards randomly. And what that does, any musicians in the crowd? This 3, 4? Come on. I know there's more than that. Okay, so the deal is what you do is you start practicing things out of order. And that allows you, when someone asks a question of you in your presentation, let's say I'm talking about the solution and then someone brings up a question about competition. If I elect not to defer that question, I have to address it right away. I know in my mind, I think, okay, what does that card say? Boom. I come up with my answer and quickly get back on track. Because derailing your presentation or getting off track, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, is something that is going to be one of your biggest enemies. Okay, so developing your story now. This is the third benefit of what I'm talking about here. You take the cards and you mix them all up. Let's say you mix them up and the problem is the first card that you come up with. Then what you do is you open up with your hook talking about the problem. You do that, and then with the hook, let's just say we're LinkedIn. We said, essentially there's no trusted and effective way for professionals to find and transact with each other online. Boom, solution. Well, we have a solution. And then you get into your solution about whatever it is that you have and however they would have described it. So are you tracking with me on this? You do it again. You mix up the cards. You come up with competition first. You open up with a hook. And then you come up with however you want to build a presentation. So here's the beauty of this. This is truly a mind hack. I don't care if you're not creative or you are creative. You will become creative when you do this. And when you do this, you're going to come up with an exciting way to tell your story. Trust me. I'm going to probably spend one more minute on this topic, but if this is an example of one of the takeaways that if you do this, it works. It's amazing, and it's so crazy simple. Now, what you get to do is you get to have your people, your friends, the people you work with, your spouse, your whomever, you get to practice your presentation. So what I like to do is I take my cards and I mix them up and I have a beer. And I sit back and I get creative and I have fun, I relax with it. Again, it's a fun thing, and then all of a sudden you say, oh yeah, I'm going to start with the problem. And then all of a sudden I identify a problem, then I say, oh, I know these really cool cats, and these guys are the ones that are the ones that can really bring the solution to bear on this. Then I start talking about that, and then all of a sudden I said, and then I put the logo up, and then we started a company. The point is, you will come up with a very exciting way to tell your story. So please try this. It's fun. And again, it doesn't have to be just for an investor presentation. It could be for any presentation. Okay, the next thing is putting together visuals. They're supporting visuals. Now, if you've noticed my slides, they've been very simple. There's a really good article online by TED Talks about the 10 principles for building an effective presentation. And I'm following all of those rules in this presentation. You don't want a lot of animation. You want a very simple slide. It goes on and on. I'll take you through it a little bit here. So to create a powerful presentation, you want to have visuals if you have that kind of time. Elevator speech doesn't work that way, but a 15-minute investor presentation absolutely does. So when you do this, remember, your visuals are not your speaking notes. They're not your speaking notes at all. They are just essentially a visual journey of you and your story with you as a narrator. That's it. You want these slides to deliver on whatever that major point is. What's my major point here? I have a couple here, but one of them is use and develop exciting visuals. The other thing you want to do is have a recurring theme. If you notice, I have this person. He's consistent throughout the entire presentation. And he is, now I'm not doing an investor presentation, I'm teaching how to do one. So you might not use something like that. But this is essentially you. That's how I see you. And so you're up there giving your presentation. That theme is going through the entire presentation and lots of white space. Now, research has shown that if you can come up with a powerful visual, your retention rates will soar. It can go as high as 65%. If you don't do it, it can be as low as 10%. So keep in mind, visuals work great if you do them right. They're not your speaking notes. I can't reinforce that enough. So, as I mentioned, I hear hundreds and hundreds of presentations. About 2.5, 3 weeks ago, I sat a business lawyer associate that who's done some business law for one of the companies I was involved in. Always makes introductions, kind of like the whole deal flow thing. And so I sat down with this company. It's a wine business. And what they have is an app. I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't think they would want me to, but the point is they did their presentation. I asked him a few questions and completely derailed his presentation. Now, I'm one of those empathetic type of audiences because, one, I know what I'm doing in terms of derailing them. But two, he had invested a lot of money in his company. So he had a great story. He put $650,000 in his company. He had contracts in place. He had employees in place. He had a couple of his key employees. A great story. He gives me his presentation, and I'm thinking, this presentation sucks. It's just not a good presentation. So what I want to do is share with you what I did. I reworked one of his slides. So he is asking for $6 million. And this was one of his slides. Now, I'm sure many of you have done slides like this, and we've all done slides like this. But I'm here to tell you that if you are reading that slide right now, you probably do not hear a word I'm saying. So I'm curious, how many have heard really a word? How many of you are focused on reading that slide when I was talking? Really, seriously, raise your hand. This is important. Okay, so it looks like about half of you. Interesting. Okay, so typically what happens when you put a slide like that up there, people are focusing on that. Anytime you put too much information on a slide, your audience is going to quickly, if they're smart, because that's the way they're going to be like trying to figure stuff out, they're going to quickly try to deconstruct that slide, and they're going to see what the heck is going on. And the minute you do that, you are losing focus and you're losing momentum. It just doesn't work having slides like this. This kind of information is the information you put in your business plan. When you do your visual, I'm going to show you how I redid this slide, by the way. I didn't have a beer with us. I think I might have had some wine. So basically, what I did is, because the key message here is they're asking for $6 million, and he has some language in there. It has all this stuff about use of funds, about employees, salaries, G&A expenses, all that stuff that investors don't, it's like those are all red flags. So you don't want to put up too many red flags. He has cash deficit down there. So anyway, his basic message is, I'm raising $6 million, I need, and then I'll generate another $5.2 million over 2 years. Okay, that's what his slide's saying. Here's how I reworked it. And this is one slide, by the way, and it builds on itself. We're a wine company. We have the vessel in place. The company is well established. We have contracts, we have employees, and we put $650,000 in this company. We are seeking a $6 million investment to take this company to the next level. This $6 million will generate roughly $5 million in net revenues. With that $5 million in net revenues, what it will do is it will give us total funding of $11 million that we invest in the company. What we know is after that investment, this company becomes self-funding after 2 years, and we never, ever, ever have to ask for a dime of money again from our investors. That's how I would do that slide. Versus, the question is now, do you prefer that? Or this? That? Or this? Okay, so it works well. And again, you don't need to put all that information on a slide. It's in the business plan. So keep that in mind. You want to get creative with your slides. And I'll tell you right now, you see the slides, I have about 40 slides in my presentation. I'll tell you right now, I have put over 30 plus hours into building these slides. That's what it takes. It's a lot of work. And I worked with someone who does this for a living, who knows what they're doing. This stuff is not easy. It's time consuming. So that's what you're up against. You know, you can't think that you're going to be able to whip this out in 6 hours or 3 hours or the afternoon. Okay, next topic. Here what you want to do is talk about when we talk about the preparation, what happens before you actually get into the pitching. You've got your visuals, you've got a story that you're going to tell, and you have your 10 topics, and it's all well put together. Then what you need to do is rehearse like crazy. Now the guy sitting down or the gal sitting down is the coach. Find yourself a coach and find someone who will give you feedback that you can trust and count on versus, you know, when I give it to my sister, and I do give my presentations to my sister, you know, she's so proud of me, it's like I can't do anything wrong. But I have another friend of mine, it's like I can't do anything right. You know, I present to him and it's like, come on, Richard. You know, it's like, this is as good as it gets. And he always keeps pushing me. Find someone that is like that for you. But also find people that you can give it to, whether it's people you work with or whether it's your friends, and of course yourself. Practice your presentation over and over and over again. Any politician will tell you that the number of hours that it takes to practice a presentation it's crazy for just like a 20-minute presentation. Put the time in. And you'll get to a point where you see the presentation. You know, if I put in maybe a whole bunch more hours, I probably wouldn't have any of these index cards as a little safety net. And you know, people who give a presentation over and over and over again, they get to lose the cards. But if you're doing a presentation for the first, second, or third time, you know, it's nothing wrong with having some cards in your hand. But the key is you've got to practice. Okay, now that you've practiced, what you want to do is call ahead. So if you are presenting in a VC's office, get on the phone and say a couple things. One, what kind of equipment do you have available for me to, because you want to check to make sure that you can basically get your presentation off in their office. And if they don't have the equipment that you need, ask if you can bring your own equipment. Give you an example. I came here, I didn't have a chance to work with our audiovisual person prior to today, and I knew one thing I need to have. I need to have every possible connector with me because I didn't know what could have happened or what might not have happened. And so the very first thing I said, hi, Guy. The first thing I said to the guy over there, I said, Guy, I want to plug in my computer the visual. I have a Mac. And he asked me, do you have the connector? I've been in situations where I did not have the connector. You do that once, you don't do it again. Yes, I had the connector. Make sure that you have all the equipment needs down to the finest detail. This little clicker, I have extra batteries with me right over there. Whatever you need, make sure you have backups every which way. Okay, moving on. The other thing you want to do when you call ahead is you want to ask to have access to that room about 30 minutes prior to your actual presentation. And the reason why you want to do that is you want to set up and design that room for success. So essentially, you're going to have that, turn your computer on, your first slide up on the screen, have your handouts, whatever you're going to perhaps put out in front of the desk. If you're going to have a product display up, go ahead and set it up. But you want to design that environment for success. Don't be afraid to dazzle them. Don't be afraid to impress them. It will make your presentation that much more effective. Okay, now you're ready to pitch. This is an example of a slide that took quite some time, by the way, to do, because we had to create it. So anyway, now you're ready to pitch. Oftentimes what happens, let's say you're in a VC or an office, an investment office, you'll have someone perhaps join the meeting that is someone you don't know. Because they're maybe walking down the hallway, they talk to one of the partners, and they say, oh yeah, this company is kind of interesting, come join us. And then before you know it, you have a new person in your office, in your meeting that you don't know. Make sure everyone's introduced. Now the other thing, and this is critical, you want to basically pace the audience. You want to make sure that you are moving at a pace that everyone's following and that you have a sense of controlling the flow of the meeting. And you want to do this in such a way that it's not overly controlling. So you have to kind of work back and forth. Now, it's interesting with an Israeli culture versus an American culture, it's a little bit different. So I'm saying to Ishai, is Ishai in here? Anyway, I'm saying to Ishai, I said, okay, it's time to get going, let's go. And he goes, it's okay, we'll get in here, it'll all work out. And the reality is it does work out. But an American's like, hey, it's 1:30, it's time to get this thing going. Where is everybody? It's disrespectful, yada, 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 whatever it is. So just keep in mind you want to pace your audience. I'm going to share a story with you. I was a young CEO, and this was back on the East Coast of the US, and I had just taken over a business that was the western third of the United States, up and down. And what it was an investment business. And it was a business that had too many salespeople and not enough support, back office support. There was well over 1,000 employees. And so I came in there and I said, we need to cut our sales force essentially in half, and we need to make an investment of well over $10 million into our infrastructure. To me, there's an expression we have in the US called, I've been to this rodeo before. I've done this before. So it was something that I felt pretty confident about, but I wasn't the CEO when I did it. And so at that point, I became the CEO, and I'm recommending all these changes. We're in our first board meeting. I have a very informal style. I have board members. The chairman is the person I report to in a large public company. And then there's all these other characters in the meeting they don't know my business. And so they're all outside board of directors. And they said, okay, Joel, well, you put the plan in place. You have now, you're coming up short in your revenues. You've done a good job of spending the money. And I said, essentially, don't worry about it. I got it covered. As you can imagine, that did not land very well. And so I had to basically recover. And after I got hammered, I truly did get hammered. By the way, the story ends happily ever after. But I did get hammered, and I just quickly realized I needed to change the pace of the meeting. I remember, how many of the women were in the all-women class are here? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I remember what happened. I was not pacing that audience very well, and I had to make a change. And I changed on a dime. They said later to me it freaked them out how quickly I changed, because I was being much too casual about it. So again, the whole message here is that listen to your audience and watch your audience and make sure that you're pacing them properly. You're not too informal, you're not formal enough, whatever it might be. Enough on that topic. The other thing is address burning questions. The concept of a burning question, is that something you all relate to? Is that a phrase that you would use? No? Burning question is a question that someone, they'll ask you a question, and it's a question you can't defer to later. You've got to deal with it now. It's kind of like it's burning. You got to answer it now. If you have a burning question, you have got to know when a burning question is a burning question, and you need to quickly answer that question and quickly get back to your script. This is where most entrepreneurs will fail in their presentation. And what I mean by fail is that it becomes a spin. and before you know it, their time's up, and then what's happening, you're delivering an incomplete message, and you've lost your focus. That's a good example of a meeting getting derailed. Okay, there's something that investors know about your head, about your mindset, and they know that you're pathologically optimistic. And what that means is that essentially you see a glass as half full all the time. Now, a glass could be empty, it could be half empty, who knows? But they know that you look at the world that way. You have to be a successful entrepreneur. So, when knowing that, make sure that when you present the specifics, that you, again, can defend and talk about what it is you're saying in an effective way that is very defensible, but you have a lot of excitement. And I know this goes without saying, but don't stretch the truth. Now, this can happen to all of us. We get so excited about what we're talking about, and before you know it, we've crossed the line. So always keep that little thing on your shoulder, listening to what you're saying, and that if you cross that line for some reason, quickly correct yourself and get back. The best salespeople are those that can be truthful, convincing, and it builds trust between you and the other person. It's just enough said on that. Just be truthful. The other thing is passion. Passion's a tricky subject. Everyone will tell you you need to be passionate, but I'm going to challenge that a little bit. There's different kinds of passion. There's the passion of what I would describe as the true believer. This is the person that says, this is where we're going, this is how we're going to go, and that's it. And the person's passionate about it. The problem with that kind of passion is that it doesn't lend itself well to someone who is going to pivot on their business strategy. It doesn't lend themselves well to listening to the employees, let alone to themselves or the customers. And so that makes a lot of investors nervous. But if you're passionate as a true believer, and as an explorer, the explorer is someone who says, yeah, we're going to go here, we're going to take that mountain, but what's going to happen is we're going to recognize that we can get there a lot of different ways. And it's the whole concept of failing forward. Now, failing forward is essentially the person who is constantly experimenting with different ways to implement on their business strategy. And they have a mindset and the ability to not be fearful of failing. And when I say failing, I'm not talking about blowing the whole thing up. I'm talking about essentially failing in different small ways, like we tried this, that didn't work, we tried this, it worked, and you're constantly doing this. It's an iterative process. That's the kind of passion investors love to see, because you are oftentimes taking on uncharted territory. And then the last thing in your presentation you want to do is you want to hand out your executive summary and your business plan. Because remember, these are not your speaking notes. This is not your business plan in terms of all the details. This is just to help you tell your story when you do your visuals. And so hand it out at the end of the meeting. It's not a distraction. If you hand it out before, it becomes a distraction. Okay, so that is essentially how you build an investor presentation. It's really pretty straightforward, but at the same time, the devil is going to be in the details and how you implement this. If we have time, we'll get into some Q&A, and I have a few more things to say. But I think what I'd like to do is I'm going to invite a couple Merage fellows, because I want to mix it up and have a couple elevator pitches come up here and give it a go. So with that, I'll have Yves Bitton come up here and give it a presentation. Come on up. Let's give him a big warm welcome. I'll tell you what. Let's have Michael. You ready? Okay. Hey, come on up, Michael. Now, there's something I want you to say. When they're done, I'm going to say something that has nothing to do with what they're going to be doing, and I'm going to say the perfect pitch is rare. Okay? It has nothing to do with what they're doing. So with that, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. No.
Hello?
Keep going.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. So, hi everyone. My name is Michael Wertheim, and I'm the co-founder and COO of Transport. We raised $8 million so far, and we are now looking for 3 more in order to enter the US market. So, what do we do? In a nutshell, we're the Google AdWords for digital signage. What is digital signage? Everywhere you go today, you see screens in shopping malls, in hotels, even when you take a ride on a bus or a subway. Just think, what if all those screens can be connected and reached by advertisers from just about anywhere? What it can do in order to improve the revenues and the effectiveness of this medium. Better yet, let the advertisers compete in real time on the price they're willing to pay instead of dealing with ineffective sales team, phone calls, emails. Well, this is what we do. We created AdStops, the first global online advertising platform for digital signage. If you're interested in investing in us, I'll be happy to provide you with more details. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
Nice job.
Okay, so Doctor.me. Doctor.me has developed a mobile application and a medical service that enable anyone to get a doctor visually receiving medical care within a minute, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, anywhere in the world. We already executed about 600,000 online medical consultation with 30 proprietary medical protocol that allows our physician and guiding them to get the right answer to any problem. The global telemedicine and e-health market is jumping now by about 400%, and it will reach within 8 years to about $50 billion. My name is Yves Bitton. I am an internist and a cardiologist, and I have experience of 20 years in developing and deploying telemedicine projects around the world. Our competitor, such as Teladoc, American Well, and HealthStep, are focusing on the US market. Outside of the US market, we believe that we are the major player. Our recent development is engaging and integration our apps with Watson IBM. So now we have a layer that involves cognitive computing, which enable our patient to get an answer also from a computer. We are looking to raise about $10 million this round, and that will be used to penetrate the US market and penetrate as well another 4 markets around the world. Thank you very much.
Nice job. No coaching involved. They put together their presentation, and let's give them a big round of applause for coming up here and do that. Nice job. Okay, as I mentioned to you, what I'm going to say next doesn't have any reflection on what they just did. The perfect pitch is rare, but that is your goal. Now, when you're an entrepreneur, you are busy. You're pulled every which way, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. But the thing is, oftentimes what's going to happen is your investor presentation will suffer, right? But if you have the ability to pitch, and you have the ability to pitch well, investors will see that as someone who has the ability to sell well. And oftentimes what they know is that if you have the ability to sell well, you have the ability to build a great company. And when I think of building a great company and someone who knows how to sell well, I think about Steve Jobs. And I'm going to leave you with a quote from Steve that is really him talking to all of you. It goes like this. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and the square holes. The ones who see things differently and they're not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But one thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward, and while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they could change the world are the ones that do. Thank you. So, Yishai. Judges, anybody. Okay, Yishai's going to come up, it looks like. I'm going to hold this stage until you get up here, my friend. Oh, we have a winner.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John.